I've given you a link to a document produced in 2006 called the Cyprus Statement that deals with the dialogue between the Orthodox Church and the Anglican churches about their relationships on things that unify them and divide them, including the ordination of women, which we find in Section 7 of the Cyprus Statement, followed by a discussion of heresy and the way to think about heresy in the modern world in Section 8, because heresy is an issue that is raised in the discussion of the ordination of women. In following up on my comments about opposition to the ordination of women, I thought you would find that Cyprus Statement helpful just to see how resilient those objections are. But I wanted to follow up as well by commenting on a few distinctions in the discipline of theology that I think you might find helpful. The first has to do with dogma. In theology, when one talks about dogma or dogmatic statements, we are talking about those points of Christian belief which must be believed at all times and in all places by all people. They are the fundamental universal beliefs of the Christian faith. And those fundamental beliefs, those dogmatic statements, are enshrined in the historic creeds, like the Apostles' Creed, like the Nicene Creed, which is referred to as the Nicene-Constantinopolitan Creed of 381, or the Athanasian Creed, which you'll find in the back of the prayer book, or the Chalcedonian Definition of the Faith, 454. To give an example then of a dogmatic statement that's found in the Creed, after discussing God, who is the creator of all that is, and of the Son and the Son's relationship to the Father, the Creed says, for us and for our salvation, he became incarnate of the Virgin Mary and was made human. That statement about the incarnation of the Son and the Son's incarnation for us and for our salvation then lays the groundwork for doctrinal discussions, distinguishing doctrine from dogma. Doctrinal discussions then attempt to draw out the implication of those dogmatic statements. And doctrinal discussions can be multiple and they can vary. So for example, one can talk about multiple doctrines of the atonement, multiple ways by which Christians have understood how it is that Jesus' death brings about a reconciliation between God and human beings. So there is the doctrine of atonement that was articulated in the Middle Ages by Anselm, the doctrine of the atonement articulated a little bit later by Abelard, the doctrine of the atonement that seems to run throughout many of the patristic documents, which Gustav Hollein has called the doctrine of Christus Victor. There is the doctrine of the atonement that has called a substitutionary doctrine of atonement that is particularly popular among Christian fundamentalists. All of these doctrines are ones that are attempting to understand the dogmatic statement about the incarnation and its significance as an act by which human beings are reconciled to God. So if you think about dogma as providing boundaries, as providing a corral, if you will, then doctrinal discussions happen within those boundaries, and they do so engaging one another and attempting to come to terms with the truth of the dogmatic statement. What constitutes heresy is when those doctrinal discussions move beyond the boundaries that seem to be defined by the dogmatic statements. So as you read the Cyprus Statement, one of the interesting turns in that document is, where does the doctrine of the ordination of women fit? Does it fit as a part of a dogmatic discussion, or does it fit as part of a doctrinal discussion? Is it appropriate to think about discussions of the ordination of women in relationship to heresy? Or if you look at other discussions, particularly discussions in the Anglican Communion about the ordination of bishops, the consecration of bishops, since Anglicans, the Church of England has already decided to ordain women deacons and ordain women priests, whether or not that discussion really has anything at all to do with doctrine, much less dogma, but rather it is a discussion that falls under the category of church order. That is, it falls in the same discussion as polity, which is not a doctrinal discussion. It's not a discussion about dogma. It's about how the church chooses to order its life. The discussion about holy orders and about sacraments might be a doctrinal discussion, but the discussion about the ordination of women is not in some circles where it is being discussed. So that begins to reveal to you, I hope, just how complicated this discussion is, and why, when you read the Cyprus statements and try to back away from it a little bit and look at it from the perspective of certain Anglicans, some of the issues that are raised there in the Orthodox articulation seem utterly irrelevant, because the topic is not being discussed even in the right category. It shouldn't be discussed as part of a dogmatic discussion or as a part of a doctrinal discussion.